How's it? Welcome to the OUTA Hour. The whole country's saying the same thing. Yes, there's a heat wave at the moment, eh? What, 30 degrees is not a heat wave? Everyone driving around, it's summer. This is what summer's supposed to be like. I've got everybody telling me, Tom, yeah, such a heat wave at the moment. Well, in the middle of a sweltering heat wave in the southern tip of Africa, welcome to the OUTA Hour. I'm Tom London, your host for the next 60 minutes. What are we talking about tonight? We're talking about electricity. Talking about these damned Karpowerships that we thought we were finished talking about last year. All of a sudden, everyone's talking about Karpowerships again. And we gotta watch this one because OUTA was highlighting the problems with the Karpowership deal and contracts last year sometime. Stefanie, Fick, Chris, Yelland, Liz McDade all saying, whoa, we do not need this. This is a bad deal. Now we know that our government is exceptionally great at doing bad deals. So what do we need to watch out for here? You know, the whole country's saying, sort the load shedding out, sort the load shedding out. And then the politicians come around and go, yeah, but we had those Karpowerships. We can bring them back into the harbor. That will fix things. Will it? We'll find out tonight as we chat to Stefanie Fick, Executive Director of the Accountability Division, and Chris Yelland, OUTA's energy consultant. We'll also be saying hello to you. Pop your hellos in the comments section down below. By the way, what temperature do you think a heat wave should start at? There's my first question for you tonight. Got nothing to do with electricity. Got nothing to do with maladministration. It's got to do with the sun, which the government can't destroy. What temperature? Is it 35, 30? Is it 40? What temperature would you say a heat wave starts at? That's what I want to know. Let me ask Stefanie Fick what temperature a heat wave starts at in her neck of the woods. Hello, Stefanie.
Hello, Tom. How's it, everybody? Hi, Chris. Looking forward to. May I just correct you? I think we are talking about the lack of energy, or the lack of electricity.
Yeah, but then, then I wouldn't have been able to make that zzz noise. It's good to see you, Stefanie.
Thank you.
What temperature does a heat wave start at?
I think the science say if it is, it's continuous. I think it's like 4 or 5 days continuously, like
hot,
2 degrees hotter than usual, something to that effect.
Okay.
I do believe if you reach a certain temperature, it's hot. You know, then you're hot. Then it doesn't matter. Okay. It's like cold. I mean, what's the difference between -10 and -20? Yeah. It's freaking cold. So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Got it. No firm temperature from Advocate Fick. Chris Yelland, how's it? How you doing? What temperature does a heat wave start at?
I think about 35.
Yeah,
for me,
I'm
anyway.
With you. I'm with you.
If it's 35 for a few days, I'm beginning not to cope. You know, I'm starting to melt. So I reckon 35.
Now, Samantha van Nispen says she got in her car when she left work today, and the outside temperature, it's not in the shade, of course, it's 37 degrees. Well, that's a heat wave. But this 30 thing, nah, that's just a nice summer as far as I'm concerned. Okay, shall we see who's first tonight? Who's our chief whip this evening? It's Tallulah Moon. Hey, Tallulah, you're the chief whip. Congratulations. Beat Claire Feldman and Fikile Dada to it. Talking of Claire Feldman, here she is on your screen. Hello, OUTA, says Claire. Fikile Dada is there. Fikile says hello. Who else have we got with us? Say how's it. I like saying hello to people. Advocate Fick, Stefanie Fick is in the comments section. You can chat to her there. Christo Fenter, hello, OUTA and all. I'm here. Hello, Christo. Good to have you with us. Right, who else do we have joining us this evening? Vut Zarko. Howdy. We are down to 20 today. Says what? Andre Jennings says hi all. Samantha van Nispen, I see she's commenting in the comment section. Samantha will be looking after your comments in Facebook and Maseko, YouTube rather, and Maseko will be looking after your comments in Facebook. Google says, this is Sam, if the maximum temperature of a particular town is expected to meet or exceed 5 degrees above the average, it's a heat wave. Okay, there we go. Laura Bass, hello OUTA and members. Hello Laura, good to have you with us. Ian Paulson, don't forget to like and share the show, please. Michael John Pillsbury from Quebec, Eastern Cape, hello OUTA team. And Law Bramley is joining us. Hi OUTA. More and more will join us. As you join, say hello to us so we can see you on screen, and the moderators in the comment section can say how's it to you there. It's very, very nice to be with you on this Wednesday evening. 7 o'clock is when the show goes out live. Tonight we're talking about Karpowerships. Let's get into the discussion, shall we? And let's start with Chris Yelland and ask Chris we're just going to have to recap, because what happens with this story and with our government is that they say, oh, okay, it's gone, and the court challenges, and it disappears, and then 6 months later, like a bad smell, it comes back. So let's just rewind, shall we, to last year or thereabouts, to why there were objections to these great big ships that are going to park in our harbors and then generate electricity and miraculously cure all of the load shedding and the problems we have in our lives. Why is that a pipe dream, Chris Yelland?
I think there's a whole lot of reasons why there has been actually more than one court actions. But in the case of OUTA, and I don't want to steal Stefanie's thunder because she's the legal beaver in this outfit, but I think OUTA is basically saying the award of the licenses, the generation licenses by NERSA was irregular, that it was unlawful, and it stands to be reviewed by the courts. And I think the basis for this, there's a number of arguments that that OUTA put forward, and Stefanie will, I'm sure, elaborate on them. But the main ones that I could see are that the license, before you give a generation license, there are a number of conditions that have to be met. So, for example, you have to have port authorization. You have to have a pipeline license, because there's a pipeline from the ship to the floating gas regasification unit, and from that to the power ship, and they didn't. You need some authorization for that, a license.
Yeah.
You also need a power purchase agreement with Eskom, and lastly, you also need an environmental authorization.
Yeah.
Now, none of these things are in place.
Hold on. None of them. Not one.
No, not one. So they don't have these authorizations in place, and there also were some legal challenges underway at the time, and the point is you can't achieve financial closure, until these things are all settled. And the point is that I think, without stealing Stefanie's thunder, the authorizations were not in place, and the issuing of a license was irregular. OUTA saw that as the way in which to challenge this, this whole program of the Karpowerships. Now, there are many reasons why we think Karpowerships or powerships are undesirable, but the legal issues are, I think, that they issued these licenses without following due process.
All right, we'll get into
out of my depth.
No problem. We'll get back to your area of expertise, and that's the nitty-gritty of how many megawatts they're able to generate and how long it will take for them to start generating. I've got a whole lot of questions up my sleeve, Chris, but let's ask Stefanie what the problem with the legal process was. Stefanie?
So, I think let me try and be quick and not bore everybody, because what Chris has to say is very important as to, not just the legalese, but practical. We are, the minister and some of the, rhetoric out there is sort of hinting at the fact that, Karpowership is our saving grace. We're going to have, no load shedding. Our problems will all be solved when these ships come into our harbor. In fact, I read a newspaper article, nearly fell off my chair, where the guy has said, we are such dire straits that it shouldn't, the environmental authorizations, the environment.
Just bring the ships in, man. Who cares?
No, just bring it in. And this is what makes it so interesting, is that despite the procedure, which I'll quickly go through now, and the legalese, is that practically this is not the solution to, and it's not a quick fix to load shedding. And one of those reasons, and that Chris can explain, is now how many electricity will be made available from these ships? How long will it take for the ships to actually start generating electricity? But back to the court case. So we all know that Karpowership had a bit of legal trouble with their environmental authorizations.
I remember that, yes.
Yeah, they tried to slip in through emergency sort of, they used emergency regulations, and I think at the end, they were, whether they will ever be able to prove it, but I think they hinted at, this wasn't done in an appropriate way. So let's leave it there. So that had to then reapply for this environmental authorization, which we all know was then denied, but the minister said, sort of gave them another door to go through, is basically reapplying. That is what they are doing now. But we also realized, we need to support one another. And despite the environmental authorizations, we also believe that the decision that NERSA made, because NERSA is the regulator when it comes to electricity, even Eskom, we know Eskom goes to...
thanks to NERSA that we get those nice electricity increases.
Yes.
Or tariffs, at least.
They give us electricity increases, and then they do not apply their mind when it comes to important stuff like this. But be that as it may, it has not been decided, so maybe I should be a little bit more objective. But be that as it may. So what we have realized is that in their decision-making, we believe the decision to grant them the distribution licenses and some other licenses is irrational. So if you look at the available facts and the reasoning, is that we believe that a court will say that your decision is reviewable because your decision does not speak to what you have. And what they should have seen in this application is the affordability of a 20-year contract with Karpowership. And that we believe NERSA should have.
All right, you froze.
How this will impact. Hello?
Yeah, you're back.
Hello?
No, hello?
Okay.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello, you're back. Samantha, before we went on, let me just say, Samantha van Nispen said, can't we just laugh sometimes? So there we go. There's the laughter, Sam. So I mean, I guess that's the crux of the matter. Apart from the environmental impact, the big deal here is that these contracts are 2 decades long, 20 years. And it would be crazy to think we're going to have electricity problems and generation problems in 20 years from now, that we haven't sorted it out, that we still got those ships in the harbor that we're paying big money for. Exactly. I want to get into the nitty gritty of this, because we got questions coming in and I can't answer them, and Chris Yelland can answer some of these. Let's start with Claire Feldman, who wants to know how much electricity Karpowerships can actually supply. Chris?
Their rated power, and I know this is getting a little technical, is there's 3 projects, and in total it's 1,200 megawatts. Now, it doesn't generate that 1,200 megawatts continuously 24 hours a day, but it generates it for a very good part of the day, from 6 o'clock in the morning till about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. So it's for the majority of the day. What I just want to try and put this in perspective. One stage of load shedding is 1,000 megawatts.
Right. So at peak capacity, they can get rid of one stage of load shedding.
Exactly. So that, I think, talks to what Stefanie was saying. People think that, or say that, let's get it in, it's going to solve all our problems. Well, it will reduce about one stage. So instead of stage 6, we'll have stage 5. Instead of stage 5, we'll have stage 4.
Why is that? Why is that not a good thing, Chris?
Well, it is a good thing if there were not cheaper and quicker and better alternatives. Now, let's just talk to the price. Now, you know that these things are 20-year power purchase agreements, And people say that's way too long. Maybe because it's an emergency, we should only contract for maybe 3 years or 4 years. However high it is, and the price is very high, is going to be much higher if you have a 3-year or 4-year contract, because you're going to amortize certain costs over a much shorter period. It means
and they'll increase the quote.
The price is going to be higher. Yeah. So if they reissue the inquiry, you can expect that however high it was for a 20-year contract is going to be higher still for a 3 or 4 or 5-year contract. So that's the first thing to note. And the other thing to note is the speed. Some people think that these things can be deployed in 3 months. It's not true. There's quite a bit of infrastructure that still has to be built. For example, I mean, just to get hold of a floating storage and regasification unit today, in today's market, with the Russian-Ukraine war and the demand for liquefied natural gas from Europe, we're way down on the queue. These guys have been working away on this and sorting out their needs much quicker. And we're going to come along with a small requirement and expect that the world is going to jump to our tune. No, we're going to stand in a long queue. And then there's also other infrastructure, pipeline.
Yeah, I want to ask you about I want to ask you about some of the infrastructure, Chris, because Anthony Reese has popped a comment in the comment section. Anthony says the power line infrastructure required to feed the power from the ship does not exist. New high-capacity power lines will have to be built to the main power switching stations. The planning to create this and the logistics will be highly problematic. We already know we don't have grid capacity for some of the new renewable projects, and now we're talking about bringing ships into a harbor, and the power lines aren't there to connect them to. Is that right?
That's right, and not just the power lines.
That sounds crazy, Chris.
Power lines can actually be built reasonably quickly, but electricity substations that have to be extended, new transformers, new switchgear bays, as well as the lines themselves, the electrical infrastructure, I doubt whether they could have that ready in a year or more. If I add up, the floating storage and regasification units, the pipelines, the harbor infrastructure, and the electrical switchgear side of things, and I see that this could take maybe 18 months, 2 years. So it's not a quick fix.
Well,
they are quicker.
I want to get to that in a moment. Your solutions, but let me ask you about the cost. What is the cost? What will it cost the public per kilowatt hour of Karpowership energy?
Well, to start off with, one's got to look at the bid price, the price at which they were selected to be a preferred bidder. In round figures, was about R1.50 per kilowatt hour at the time of bid. Now, at the time of bid, the price of liquefied natural gas in US dollars on the international market was at its lowest, at one of its lowest points that it has ever been. And subsequent to that, we had the COVID crisis, which caused certain supply constraints. And then we had the Ukrainian-Russian war, which really put a rocket under the price of the fuel. Now, the fuel, in that R1.50 a kilowatt hour, the fuel component was about, at the time of bid, is about R1 a kilowatt hour. So the fuel component is 2/3 of the tariff price, which is of R1.50 kilowatt hour. So if the fuel price goes up 5 times, which it's done as a result of the Ukrainian war, that means 2/3 of the price of R1.50 has shot up from R1 to R5. And the 50 cents, let's say, stays the same. So now you're talking about R5.50 a kilowatt hour.
So it couldn't possibly be what we were quoted. Okay. And how expensive does it make that energy at that price?
Yeah, it makes it more expensive, currently than the diesel open cycle gas turbines.
Oh, really?
Which are really expensive indeed. And remember, these are plants that are running like 18 hours a day. The open cycle gas turbines generally, should be running for no more than an hour a day. They are, in fact, running sometimes at 8 hours a day, but they're not running at 18 hours a day. That I can tell you. So what I'm saying is, when the price is high for the fuel and you run it for a long time, for an extended period per day, then the rand price becomes exceptionally high. And this is not the least cost solution, not by a long shot. And I don't believe it's the least quickest solution either. The alternative solutions can be delivered quicker and cheaper and better for the environment, better for CO2 emissions.
Well, here's my question, right?
For the sea life.
Here's my dummy question, because I'm not an energy expert. But you just said that those Karpowerships, their peak capacity, I think it was 1100 megawatts? 1200 megawatts, right? Delivered mostly during daylight hours, and then there's a component that goes up to, 9, 10 o'clock or at night or so.
Correct.
Is it faster and cheaper to put solar arrays up to take care of daytime energy needs rather than have those ships out there? Or what would your solution to the problem be, Chris?
There's a growing realization, including by the president in his statement 2 days ago, that the quickest, least cost solution is solar PV and battery storage deployed by literally hundreds of thousands of customers of electricity on houses, domestic dwellings, and commercial buildings, and parking lots, and small factories.
You're talking about
all around the country.
You're talking about, for example, at the house I live in has got 20 odd solar panels on the roof. It's got a 10 kilowatt hour battery, but it doesn't use all of that power during the day. There's a lot of power being generated off that roof that is going nowhere, really. That could be fed back into the grid. How quickly does that add up? I mean, and do we have any numbers? Do we have any idea of how many households are out there that could plug in, what that equates to, and how quickly this could get rolled out?
Well, I can just give you an example of Vietnam. Vietnam is a country with a GDP per capita of less than South Africa. In other words, people are poorer in Vietnam than in South Africa.
Yeah.
As a country, it's a developing country like South Africa. It's of a similar level of development to South Africa. They installed 9,000 megawatts of rooftop solar PV and battery storage in the domestic, commercial, and agricultural sectors alone in 1 year. There's 9,000 megawatts. Now, Medupi and Kusile are 9,600, the two of them. That has been taken 15 years to construct at the moment, and it's only half of it is delivering into the grid. So only 4,800 megawatts are going into the grid after 15 years of construction. You can deliver double that in 1 year, and it's been done in Vietnam, and it's because you have literally hundreds of thousands of projects being built simultaneously at no cost to the fiscus. It doesn't cost the fiscus a cent. People are doing it at their own cost. And that's the solution. This can deliver power quickly, but it needs to be allowed, it needs to be encouraged, and it needs to be incentivized.
Let me ask the obvious question, and let me ask Stefanie Fick. Why isn't this allowed? Surely it's not a huge thing to get to sort out, Stefanie, or is the problem here NERSA? And the reason I'm asking that question is there was a comment that I wanted to catch, and if you give me a second, I'm see if I can find it. There we go. Renee Kilner says, NERSA is supposed to be independent. However, as appointments have been more politically aligned as years have gone by, and then the message ends, but I think you got the gist of it. Is the problem that NERSA is not exactly in the business of pushing our power up fast and efficiently? That they are not as independent as we'd like them to be?
May I answer it this way? I think it's two different. If you look at NERSA in their decision making and policy making, I think it's sometimes it's better than in others. But I think as a whole, and maybe Chris, with your experience, should also chip in here. But there is political influence. But the fact that our electricity and electricity supplies in the mess that it is is political interference. In other words, there is no political will to open up the system in order to create more electricity. I mean, I am really talking from not a technical, it's not my field of expertise, but if you look at what is happening, is that for 20 odd years there were no maintenance at Eskom. Eskom was literally tapped, the resources were tapped, the amount of money that was lost through pure corruption is hair-raising. Contracts that were signed that was definitely not in the best interest of Eskom, therefore not in the best interest of society. And it was really just a perfect storm where we are currently. And NERSA can open up the grid if I want to say if there's I want to answer it from this point of view. I think if there's an application. Because they have to decide on applications that is in front of them. But I think opening up our grid, and specifically what happened in city of Cape Town, is about regulations. Chris, maybe you can add there.
I wanted to say this. NERSA has a lot to answer for. There is a kind of a political, ideological position that I'd like to explain, but I also want to, before I explain NERSA's ideological position for delaying this, I think one must also know that the incumbents, that means Eskom and the municipalities, have been very obstructive and have seen this as sort of encroaching on their monopolies.
We get into the money now. You see,
they're trying to protect their market share, and they are monopolies, and they see this as eating into their business. But before we go on, I just want to explain, in NERSA's, there is a particular ideological position that I've noticed at NERSA some years ago when I interviewed them. Their argument is this: they have a certain methodology of setting the price, and the methodology is called a cost recovery methodology. So Eskom works out all its costs, and then it gives a sales forecast of it's going to sell so many kilowatt hours of electricity in the year, and therefore they work out a price per kilowatt hour based on the sales figure that will recover from the tariff all of the costs. So now, if people start using alternative energy sources, it means that Eskom will sell less kilowatt hours. If Eskom sells less kilowatt hours, it means the price of electricity must go up to recover the fixed costs. And so the less Eskom sells, the higher the price goes. It's completely counterintuitive. Normally you think the more you sell, the price will come down. In fact, in Eskom's case, if you sell less, the price goes up, okay? And that means that the rich people who can afford to put in these solar systems, they will cause Eskom to sell less kilowatt hours. And that means that the people who remain on the grid will have to pay more. So what they're saying is that rooftop solar PV is fundamentally anti-poor, because as the rich put in the systems, the poor have to pay more to recover the costs, the fixed costs of Eskom. It's a nonsense argument, actually, and I can refute it in many ways. But that is an ideological position that they hold.
Got it right. So firstly, you got the municipalities worrying about losing out on income. And then you got the big electricity generator, Eskom, saying, hold on a moment, if all the people that can afford to pay for electricity generate their own, it's only the poor left to pay for the electricity, and the price goes up.
Exactly.
I mean, it kind of makes sense in a wishy-washy way, except that we've got examples all around the world where this has been done and it hasn't destroyed any big energy companies, and we're a country that has an energy shortfall. Duh. I want to know, Chris, can I ask you like a really technical question? Because this megawatt thing is getting me, right? So if Karpowership can do 1,200 megawatts, I'm trying to work out how many rooftops you need to replace that. So, like, let's say my rooftop has got